Good evening, Stevens Point, and welcome to a festive episode of the Sports Hub. I'm your host, Will Haroldson, and alongside me today are my partners, Brody Kupsky and Ashton Parker. We have some exciting topics to cover, like the Pointers hockey's thrilling overtime win versus UW Superior, the UWSP men's basketball team's upset win at Platteville, and the Pointers women's basketball team bounces back versus the Pioneers. All of this and more when we return. Now for UWSP athletic updates. I probably sound like a broken record by saying this, but man, what a chaotic weekend for the Pointers men's hockey team. The first game of the weekend was as we expected. The Pointers went up to River Falls and took care of the Falcons 3-1. But Saturday's game against UW Superior was anything but normal. The Yellow Jackets came out and set the tone early, scoring just 5 minutes into the game. You think that's impressive? Well, that's really nothing. After taking a 1-0 advantage into the first intermission, it took the Yellow Jackets only 8 seconds to notch their second tally on the night, making it 2-0 early in the second. After 2 3/4 periods, all seemed lost for UWSP, but a crazy final 2.5 minutes, which saw the Pointers put up 2 goals in 54 seconds of each other and take the game to overtime. It was back and forth in overtime, but eventually Dawson Sincaria was the hero of the day for the Pointers and scored the game winner in overtime. Man, what a game. What did you guys make of this one? Because they really pulled one out of a hat.
So as a fan, it was just kind of hard watching it because, all of a sudden they scored a second goal right away in the second period, and you're like, well, they're done. But no, they played really well, and just a lot of goals that they could have scored, but it just seemed to not go in. I mean, credit to Miles Hector. He had a heck of a game most of the game until the last, few minutes where he blew said lead. And, the student section was just wild when we scored those 2 goals. And in OT, Dawson Chirino, fantastic goal. He was just carving through Superior to get that goal. And credit to him, he played really well. And, it's a good win, but also raises questions of, does this team have what it takes to, play games and win against good teams?
I think that's a really good question. And Ashton, you were on the call with Liam earlier in the week. What were your views on the game? Because I know you really didn't have much to talk about for about 58 minutes of the game.
Yeah, for 58 minutes of that game, it was pretty boring. It was pretty sad too, because it was my first time ever calling a hockey game, and as soon as the second period started, Superior scores a goal right away. However, I will say those last few minutes on the call, that was exciting. Just being able to, feel the excitement coming from me and Liam, and it was great. But however, there's a comment that Brody said that I might want to, he said that Miles Hector, kind of blew said lead. And I don't know if that's entirely the case. I would make the case that those more Superior's defense evaporating into thin air in those last couple of minutes is the main reason why Superior lost that game. Now, obviously, Miles Hector let the pucks through the net or into the net to score the goals. However, he had an amazing game. He was a stone wall for most of the time. However, I would personally think it was more the team effort on Superior is the main reason they lost rather than Miles Hector, because I also made an analogy that, someone might be a stone wall. However, if you just keep pounding it over and over again, it'll break eventually. It might take a while, but it will break eventually.
Yeah, 44 shots on the day for Point. Only Hector allowed 3 of those in, so he had 41 saves on the night, which is ridiculous. But yeah, I think Ashton's point there, Brody, talking about just kind of Superior really didn't do Hector any favors because he was just a stonewall all game, and if they're able to make this a 3-0 game and really put this one away, but they just weren't able to. And I guess credit Stevens Point, they were on the 6-on-5 and 6-on-4 at one point, which they pulled the goaltender Wagner and got that first tally. And then obviously later they got the 5-on-4 or 6-on-5 again and they scored. But yeah, you gotta point out that Superior kind of let down Hector.
Yeah, I guess I give credit towards Hector. He did have a pretty good game. Really solid game out of him. But I did see a tweet somewhere. It was from one of the Superior's, I think, play-by-play guys. He said that Stevens Point really had their momentum shift in that second period after how many shots on goal that they had. I mean, down by our end as the student section, I mean, you almost thought everyone was going to go in, but it just either one shot was right at Hector or is just out of reach for the goal. And I would say, the team kind of did let him down in some aspects, not stopping Chirino on that breakaway that led him to the goal. And, it's a tough game. Hockey is a tough game, but, it's also, not just your goal, it's a team effort.
Yeah, without question. And they have another matchup that's really big matchup this weekend. It's going to be 14 versus 15 this week. Stevens Point, obviously, we just learned they were ranked 15th in the country this week after the thrilling overtime victory, and they're going to be taking on number 14 Eau Claire this Friday. So maybe it'll be a little bit of a heated hockey game, because if you remember last time Eau Claire came to KB Willett Arena, they just spanked Stevens Point and kept them out of the playoffs. Really, they kept them out of the tournament. What are you guys looking forward into this rematch game on Friday? Because this is going to be one of the bigger games of this entire season. I mean, we keep saying this is a big game. It's a big game. This is the first ranked on ranked matchup we're going to have hosted here in KB Willett.
Didn't they host?
I should say first ranked WIAC game.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, because I didn't know if Stevens Point was ranked when they played St. Norbert.
They were, but okay. I should have clarified ranked WIAC opponents. But what are you guys looking forward in this game on Friday?
So the way I look at it, it's going to be a tough game because Eau Claire, they beat St. Norbert twice at St. Norbert, 3-2 and 4-2. But also, I was kind of looking at their schedule. They almost lost to Northland in OT early in the season. They only beat River Falls by 2 goals. I mean, they all lost to Augsburg, who was a good team at one point. They lost to Superior December 2nd. So, they have, good results beating St. Norbert, but also kind of results that's like, I don't know if this team is amazing, but, it's still a tough opponent, either way. The WIAC is a tough conference usually. So you can't take every game as a grain of salt. You just got to play hard and just don't give up 2 goals right away and kind of fight your way back to hopefully win it. You just got to, score right away and play hard.
And, we talk about these revenge scenarios all the time, Ashton, and whether it was we're talking about the Badgers getting revenge on Ohio State or the Brewers getting revenge on the Cardinals, whatnot, you never want to think too much on a outcome that was, in the past. So if you're Stevens Point, obviously you want to use that as fuel a lot, but you don't want to focus too much on the past events, right? Because that may cloud your judgment, or you focus too much on maybe the wrong thing.
That's right. And, again, like you said, focusing, you have to take everything in moderation. And I think focusing a rival game or a revenge game in moderation can be really beneficial towards the team. However, you have to realize that generally after an off season, especially in college, both teams are going to be much different, or maybe not much different, but it's going to be a different sort of scenario. So whatever happened last season might not exactly translate to this season as well. So, I agree with what you said. You have to it's good to look at a revenge game as fuel, but you have to look at it in moderation. You can't really focus on too much.
And from a fan standpoint, obviously, Brody, you were watching the game. You weren't on the call with us. But is there a cause to be a little concerned? Now, Ryan Wagner, he was a stonewall after he gave up those first 2. But is there a little cause for concern to see him let in a few goals early in the game?
It is kind of a concern because, Matthias Smith has shown that he's a top-flight goalie and he can play well. But Wagner did actually look pretty well after giving up those 2 goals. He made pretty good saves on some shots. But, the Pointers have a really good set of goalies. I mean, Wagner's really good, Proctor's really good, Smith is really good. So, you can't say, okay, well, we're worried about this guy being in goal, because they're all pretty good. So, you could go either way with them.
Yeah, I mean, they all have close to a 90% save rate on the game, obviously. Wagner gave up the first 2. I kind of equate it almost to, you get a pitcher into a game, an MLB game, and maybe that pitcher gets shelled for a few home runs early in this game, but they just start finding their rhythm later in the game, and you can't touch them. I think that's kind of how Ryan Wagner is. We saw him get beat pretty bad the first 2 goals, and then he was just a brick wall. Nothing was getting by him. I think that's obviously something they're going to have to do this Friday because you're going against a really, really good UW Eau Claire team, and it's a home and away series, so they go home on Friday and then go up to Eau Claire on Saturday. That's always really difficult to prepare for. It's just like, how do you get yourself mentally ready for just a quick turnaround? Okay, if we play them and win one game, you're going to turn around and just play them the next day in their home arena. It's just, how do you prepare for that in a different level?
Yeah, it's really tough because, you could have all the success in one game, and then the next game, you all of a sudden lose. So you just got to take one game at a time and just play Pointers hockey, as I always say. You just got to play Pointers hockey.
We'll move on here to some Pointers basketball. The Pointers men's basketball team was looking for a bounce-back win against UW-Platteville after they were handled by the UW Stout Blue Devils 93-69. And bounce back they did. Jake Buchanan led the Pointers with 27 points as UWSP defeated the Pioneers 78-74 in overtime. Saturday's overtime win was not only a huge game for the Pointers, but it marked point guard Jake Buchanan's 8th consecutive game scoring double digits. So guys, WIAC regular season win number 1, check. That was something they couldn't say they did last year. What did you make of this performance so far?
I would say this season's already better because of that one WIAC regular season.
I mean, statistically, of course they're better because they have one win.
It is looking better. They have more wins than last season already, so it's already looking good. But, I wouldn't say Platteville's as good as they were in seasons past, so it's hard to say. And after losing the Stout, as much as my brother gloats about it now, they actually had a decent game against Stout for most of the first half. They were looking really well. It's just they kind of gave it away, and after going down by almost 30, it's over. But Platteville was a big bounce back game, even though it was won in OT. Still, a WIAC regular season win out of them is already a good season in my opinion.
Oh, without question. But we can just tell. 5-3 this season. They're going to have an opportunity this Thursday. It'll be a game that we're going to have here on SPTV. They're going to be taking on Trine University. They're 6-0 on the year, undefeated, coming into to Quant Fieldhouse. This is a big-time opportunity here for Ashton, for Stevens Point. But let's go back to it. What have you seen out of this Stevens Point men's basketball team that's just different from last year's team?
I think what's the main difference is they just look more refined. Last year they had flashes of brilliance, but it looked very rough around the edges. They didn't look. I think the team, if I'm correct, last year was a bit more young, and it looked like they had potential, but there's just something about it that just wasn't clicking. And I feel like, at least from what these first 8 games have been telling me, they have been able to figure out what it is. Jake Buchanan's been incredible recently. He scored 27 against Platteville. Was a main leading scorer, I think, of the entire game. So I think, they have that star in Jake Buchanan, and they're able to build around him with people like, Miles Coleman has been doing pretty good recently. And the team overall just looks better. I guess it's just not one thing that makes them better. They just overall just look better.
I would say, just looking at them offensively, they're taking better shots than they were last year. A lot of times it would be on the baseline, double-teamed, fadeaway jumper, that's just an air ball. But they're taking a lot better shots. And, it shows the past couple games they're shooting 42% from the field, 48% from the field. And like you said, Jake Buchanan, he's been leading the way. He had a game winner earlier this year, 27 points in the last outing. But like I said, if there's maybe one problem that this team has is their defense, because even in their loss, they scored 69 points against Stout. Problem is they gave up 93. That's something they're going to have to fix going forward. They were able to squeak away with a win in Platteville, but this is their biggest test on Thursday if they can get a win against an undefeated Trine team.
Yeah, without question. If they just, they're starting to shoot better, which is nice because we were talking about in Sports Speed, they just didn't really shoot a whole lot against Stout. But you just got to shoot like you have been and rebound. Rebounding was kind of a struggle early in the season, and hopefully it gets a lot better as the season goes on. But if they win against Trine, it'll kind of solidify their season that they're doing well.
Yeah, obviously they were picked to finish last in the WIAC, but there's a lot of season left to play. But it's a good trend that you like to see a team, and hopefully they can continue the winning ways and keep this momentum going. Sticking to the theme of basketball, the Pointers women's basketball team had an impressive win of their own this past weekend, taking down the red-hot UW-Platteville Pioneers. After starting off the season 1-4, the Pioneers won 3 straight games going into last Saturday's matchup at Shirley Egner Court, scoring 68 points per game in that stretch. While Stevens Point really limped into the matchup against Platteville after letting one get away from them, losing to UW Stout at home 64-58. However, this time it was the Pointers getting the W as sophomore guard Alexa Thompson scored 22 points, powering Stevens Point to a 59-53 win and improving the Pointers' WIAC record to 1-1. So a nice rebound win overall. What's the next step for Stevens Point here to keep this thing rolling? Because they're starting to get into the thick of, WIAC. They still got a few non-conference games, but how do they keep this thing going here?
Just playing Pointers basketball how they have been. I mean, they've been hitting threes. They've been playing really well defensively. They get a lot of fast breaks where they just score really well, and they're not afraid to go down the post and just ball up, really. I mean, you just got to keep playing Pointers women's basketball.
Yeah, they like to do a lot of their damage in the paint. And I almost have to blame myself because the past games that we've done here on SPTV with the women's basketball team, they've lost. So maybe I'm jinxing them by being there. Just don't show up.
You know what?
Don't show up.
Next women's game, I'm going to take Will Harrelson's spot.
All
You've
right,
heard it
all
here
right.
first.
Maybe they'll get a win, and maybe you'll have to keep doing going forward. But all joking aside, the 2 losses they've had on the season, they've not been bad losses. They've really just kind of let it slip away from them. They had the lead at one point, but they just allowed a comeback. What can a team do to just kind of tighten things down and just finish a game? Because I would say that, Stevens Point, while they're a good team, they just have that knack for kind of letting teams claw back and get back into the games.
I think it's working on mainly your. I would say it's mainly working on your late game, I should say. I don't know if it's stamina is the right word. However, I'm noticing that in these losses, near the end of the game, they're getting these shots in the paint. That's where they score the most. And then they just start missing. They start making a lot of mistakes. And I don't know if that's possibly fatigue from the game, because basketball is a very hard sport to play. You're running across the court constantly. But so I don't know if that's it. However, I'm noticing they have to tighten down those mistakes late in the game. Because first half, the Pointers women's team is very, very good. Little mistakes, getting down in the paint, they usually jump out to the lead right away. It's great stuff. And then there's just something that happens in that halftime, or maybe it's that transition from the third to fourth quarter. I think that might be the case more so, where they start making more mistakes. They start playing a little rougher. So it's tightening that down, it's refining that, and making sure, as Brody said, you play Pointers basketball, baby. It's just that you get down in the paint, just don't worry, I would say, because you could let's say you're running up court, you see, you're up 15, you're feeling great, and then you play one more quarter, and suddenly you're only up by 3 to 5 points. That can do something to a mental, and that can you or your team could start making more mistakes from that. So it could just be a combination of things, but it's mainly just down to refining.
Yeah, I think turnovers were a problem they had in the 2 losses that we've had down the stretch. That full court press and the zone defense that they played on point a few times really gave them fits. But also, not an area they were necessarily bad at. They really don't take many 3-point shots. This is not a team that's really known for their 3-point shooting. That's definitely something that they're going to need to improve on if they want to be an NCAA tournament team going down the road. Don't you agree?
Yeah, without question. And in today's basketball, if you can hit the 3, you're set for life. The 3-point shot's becoming more and more important as the years go by. So having that 3-point shooting on your team is really going to help you in the long run, and potentially later this season, if they do make the NCAA tournament, having that 3-point in the bag, it's really, really going to help them going on.
Yeah, and then thinking about this team statistically, they really don't have. Statistically they have a leading scorer, but there's 3 players on this team. Jamie Pfeiffer, Alexa Thompson, Gabby Goleta, all of those players can score double-figure points every night. And that's something that's going to be huge for Coach Hockett because, this is his first season as new head coach, transitioning from Shirley Egner, the all-time winningest in women's WIAC basketball history. But going down the stretch, you're going to need your key players to obviously do a lot of the scoring. But, in two of their losses, they have gotten in foul trouble. So, cleaning up that foul area and taking smarter shots is definitely going to be something that Stevens Point is going to have to do to go forward if they want to win games in crunch times. Because, like we said, money's made at the free throw line. You got to make your free throw shots. But if you're giving the team the bonus early, it's going to be really hard to win those games. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about the Packers' win over the Chicago Bears. So don't go away. We will be right back.
College has given me the flexibility to pursue my passions and my interests, and I've recreated my identity for myself aside from just being an athlete.
My greatest personal discovery has been that I am capable of doing things that I didn't know I was capable of doing.
To be able to study what I wanted to and continue to play the sport I love, all of those things came together very nicely in one package in Division III.
Welcome back to the Sports Hub. Nothing in this world is certain except death, taxes, and the Green Bay Packers beating the Chicago Bears. For the 8th straight time, the Green Bay Packers have beaten the Chicago Bears after Sunday's 28-19 victory in Soldier Field. It wasn't pretty by any means, but the Packers got it done. Rookie wide receiver Christian Watson had another 2-touchdown performance, but this time he had one receiving and another one on a 46-yard game-sealing end-around touchdown rush. Sunday's win over the Bears also had a historical impact too, with the Packers moving into first place as the NFL's winningest franchise, passing the Chicago Bears. So guys, how about that rookie wide receiver? Man, what a pickup for the Packers.
That was just huge. I mean, watching that game, I was just kind of frustrated early in the game. I was just like, I got to turn this off. I cannot watch this anymore. But I turned it on the second half after I did some stuff, and it was a completely different quarter. I feel like they just looked a lot better, and especially in that fourth quarter, it was a huge comeback, almost kind of like Stevens Point coming back against UW Superior. But it was a huge game out of Christian Watson, and Rodgers looked slightly better. He wasn't too great, but Christian Watson really stepped up in that game, and at the end, especially with that jet sweep, which actually kind of worked. I was kind of shocked. And he looked really well, one carry for 46 yards, just that carry alone really looked really good. And he had 3 receptions for 48 yards and 1 touchdown.
Christian Watson for Offensive Rookie of the Year.
I think he's definitely in the conversation, but something that also, obviously the Packers defense, the run defense is atrocious. They need to fix that going forward, and I don't know I'm not a defensive coordinator of the NFL. I don't know how to tell you how to do it. But they also, in the passing game, played better. They did get a fumble recovery. They also got 2 interceptions. Now, one of them was later in the game, but Jair Alexander really had one that sealed it because the Packers at the time, they were up 20-19 and the Bears were driving, and Jair Alexander steps in front of Equinemius St. Brown, former Packer, Bears wide receiver, and he sealed the game. So while it's not likely the Packers will make a push for the playoff, there's still theoretically the hope, but anytime you can beat the Bears, it's a good win. It's a
great win whenever the Packers beat the Bears. What you said earlier, it rings so true. Death, taxes, and Packers beating the Bears every time. Now, I don't know how true that's going to be in the future. In the future, the Bears are going to win against the Packers. It's going to happen eventually. You would think. You would think that'd happen eventually. You never know though. But I've already kind of considered this a lost season for the Packers. They're 5-8. They would have to win the next 4 games if they want to make the playoffs, if they have any hope of making the playoffs anyway. Because I know Washington's 7-5-1 because they tied with the Giants, so that makes things a whole lot harder. But looking at I just want to go back to Christian Watson. After that first week drop against the Vikings, that really set the tone for him for about 7 to 8 weeks, I would say. And then he ratified that he was able to go deep and was able to catch that deep ball that Rodgers threw. And as soon as that happened, it's like something switched in Christian Watson because he has been going off.
Yeah, ever since that 3 touchdown performance against Dallas.
Exactly. it's kind of incredible to see. And the Packers just continue their streak of getting really good second-round picks. Like at this point, I'm just saying they should just trade all their first-rounders for as many second-rounders as they can, because it just seems to be working somehow. I don't get it.
Yeah, somehow they get it, but I think another important thing was A.J. Dillon had a really good game for Green Bay as well. He ran the ball, got a touchdown. That was really important in bringing the game a lot closer, made it 17-19. But yeah, let's talk about that run game. Aaron Jones wasn't in it much, but that run game for Green Bay, we talked about it at the beginning of the year. It's one of the best backfields in the entire NFL with A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones.
Yeah, without question. I mean, especially since Jones went down early with an injury, or he was on the sideline most of the game. A.J. Dillon kind of stepped up and kind of did most of the workload, as he does. And realistically, it's kind of disheartening that nobody really talks about the Packers' run game. I mean, they talk about, well, we should be running it more with these guys because A.J. Dillon's already really good. Aaron Jones, really good, and now they just threw in Christian Watson on runs. They have options to run the ball, and Patrick Taylor stepped in and had a 6-yard gain. I mean, he can step in if Jones or Dillon goes down, and they really have a lot of options to go with this team.
Yeah, without question. This is an improving team, and it'll be interesting to see how things go forward, whether or not that was Aaron Rodgers' last game in Chicago. Who knows, maybe he wants to stick around for another year and just see how Christian Watson continues to develop. I think this is a better team than their record shows. They have a few losses, a few different plays. This is a different record. Now on to your favorite segment, our Rank 'em segment. That's what happens when we go around this table here. We share our top 3 moments from last week in sports. I'll go first, then Brody, and then Ashton will wrap things up. So at number 3, I'm just going to go with Wisconsin basketball beating Marquette. Obviously, that was a big-time rivalry. And Wisconsin, coming into the game, had lost to Wake Forest in a game where they gave up 32 points to Appleby, the point guard for Wake Forest. That was a rough game. But they go into Marquette, a team that had just blitzed Baylor, the number 6 team in the country. And they go into Marquette and they beat them. Really good game by Chucky Hepburn. That's my number 3. At number 2, I have to go with Point coming back and winning that game in overtime in Point men's hockey, winning that game in overtime against UW Superior. You just got to credit them. They played bad for 58 minutes, but they showed up at the very end.
I think it's funny that you have to specify which overtime men's Pointers team you have to.
I do. I have to specify the hockey. Yeah, it was big. And then at number 1, obviously, you can't not go with the Packers, becoming the all-time winningest NFL franchise and beating the Bears, who they do indeed still suck.
Facts.
He's spitting.
All right, Brody, your turn.
So I'm going to go with number 3, Utah beating USC. It really, Cameron Rising he's a stud. I mean, credit to Caleb Williams. He played really well in the first half, but kind of gave up in that second half. It's a huge win out of Utah because they knocked USC out of the playoffs, really. And although it did let Ohio State in, great. It was a huge win out of Utah and kind of solidified that, they owned USC, especially this year. My number 2 is going to be MLB free agent signings. This past weekend and even today, Jacob deGrom got signed by the Rangers for 5 years at $185 million, which is, it sucks for Mets fans, but who really cares? They just signed Justin Verlander today, which, Verlander just won the Cy Young. Credit to him, really good pitcher. But he's kind of, he's getting a little older, so who knows if this deal will work out. We're kind of hoping it doesn't.
Big pickup for the Rangers, though. Good big pickup.
Yeah, especially since they're kind of,
bad.
Yeah, well, they're kind of just finding guys here and there, like Corey Seager and Marcus Semien this past year.
It's kind of the Texas way. They just sign one big free agent. You remember Alex Rodriguez from back in the?
It's true.
Way back then.
It's true. And the Phillies just signed Trey Turner to an 11-year deal, $300 million. I mean, really solid shortstop, even probably the best in the league. Really quick, he can hit well and sometimes hit for power. So that's a huge signing out of him. So good for all 3 teams. Let's see if it works out for them. MLB's coming up. Few months.
Already.
We'll see how it goes. And my number 1 is going to be Pointer Sports this past weekend on Saturday. both hockey teams won and both basketball teams won. So, it's a great day for Pointer Sports. Granted, we would have liked them to beat each team by a lot more and not be intense and close, but wins are wins. We'll take them as we get them. So good job to Pointer Sports this past Saturday.
That's true. Get a dub any way you can. Ashton.
All right, I'm going to give a quick honorable mention before we start. The light didn't turn off. It's a Christmas miracle. I'm so happy, right? Don't you do that.
I'm knocking on wood because you're going to say it and then
it's going to turn off. I'm going to hate everything. Okay, so number 3, I am going to mainly stick around to WIAC this time around. I never usually do that, but number 3, I'm going to go for Northland beating River Falls. It was their first win of the season. It was their first WIAC win of the season, and it is their first WIAC win in roughly the same amount of time it took the Pointers men's basketball team to take a WIAC win, which I'll get to later. But just good for them. They really need it, and it's my hometown college. I'm from the area. I'm from Ashland, so I'm happy to see that. Number 2, I'm going to give it to the hockey team, men's hockey, winning 3-2 over Superior in overtime. That was an insane game, and the fact that they just scored 2 goals in under 2 minutes, maybe even under a minute, was mental. Even on the call, that was insane. So, you can just tell that after that first goal, KB Willis just woke up and nothing was stopping them. And then finally, for my number 1, I'm just going to give it to the UW men's basketball team beating Platteville. I thought that the men's basketball team just had more to prove this year. No, that's a lie. The men's hockey team had more to prove. However, I felt like the men's basketball team kind of needed this win more, I feel like, because the Pointers hockey team, you expect them to be good every year. For the past 5 years, they've been consistently good. The men's basketball team can't say the same thing. Last year, they were not very good at all. But this year, they have a over 500 record right now. They have a regular season WIAC win, which is more than you can say about last year. And things are just looking up, so I'm going to give it to them. We got to end the show soon before this light turns off.
Yeah, we got to do that too. Well, that is going to do it for another episode of the Sports Hub. If you liked what you saw, why not check out the other content we have here? And don't forget to tune in to SPTV's live streams this week. This Thursday, we have men's basketball versus Trine. That's Thursday at 7 p.m. And then on Friday, men's hockey versus UW Eau Claire at 7 p.m. For my partners, Brody Kupsky and Ashton Parker, I'm Will Haroldson. I want to thank you all for watching, and we will see you next time.